Winning is the best cure for pretty much everything college football related, but there are moments where winning specific games can ultimately hinder a program in the long term. I hate saying that. Nobody loves to win more than me. But sometimes to get to the light, you must walk all the way through the darkness. And it kind of feels that way for Florida as they go on the road to take on a Tennessee team that may not be what some of us thought they could be, or at least what we saw in the beginning of the year. But even with the loss to Arkansas, however, the Volunteers are still a big favorite to win this game, and by all accounts should. But what happens if Florida finds a way to pull out a dub in Neyland this Saturday? Could that be a scenario in which Napier begins to truly hold on to his job? All of a sudden, you are 4-2 with a chance to get to 5-2 with a win over Kentucky at home the following week. Now, most Florida fans I talk to, they're ready for a change. Their minds are made up. But it seems like those in charge are still holding out a little bit of hope, and all they need is a glimmer, one shining moment to keep Billy Napier around for another season. After all, DJ Lagway would still be there, and he's the future. The schedule would still be brutal. You don't want a guy coming into year one with that schedule. And there is technically more time on the Napier lease to Florida. So would Gator fans sacrifice a win in this game to ensure that Napier is replaced? I think some would, and in my opinion, most should. We all want our team to win. Nobody's disputing that. But sometimes ripping the Band-Aid off is the right option. I don't think beating Tennessee is going to turn Napier into a championship coach overnight, and the same problems that we've seen get him in this mess will most likely still be there. Is one weekend of short-term gratification worth a couple more years of intense pain? I don't think so. But what say you? Because it is about you, the viewer. Is it worth a loss this weekend to get Billy Napier out of town? David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, my brother, former Western State Colorado wide receiver. And David, I hate bringing up when winning is losing. But for the long-term health of Florida, is it better if Billy just drops this one and that chopping block, that guillotine, just it becomes a true fact of the matter?
Man, I'll let Florida fans call in today and say their piece, but I know on Saturday what they're going to be pulling for. You're going to be pulling to beat Tennessee. I don't care what they may say in the days leading up to it, but you want to beat this team. You want to beat a in-conference rival when game day comes. There's a lot of similarities for Tennessee with that game last week, playing Arkansas with Sam Pittman kind of with his back against the wall fighting for his job. There's even more similarities in this game to Ole Miss playing South Carolina. Ole Miss coming off that loss to Kentucky. Were they fraudulent, or was that just sort of an anomaly? They go on the road and play South Carolina. Now we know they handled business and they looked really good. I think there's a lot of similarities here. Tennessee coming off this loss to Arkansas, not just lost like a close game, really had no answer, right? On offense, especially for much of that game. Now you're going to play a Florida team that's won 3 of their last 4. You know, say what you will about the direction of the program this year. They've won 3 of their last 4. This is an old school rivalry. This is not going to qualify for any trap game even before Tennessee had this loss. So now my question is, I'm looking at this, okay, if you're Florida and you want to win this game against a team that I still think has better personnel than they do, you either turn it into a low-scoring battle the way that Arkansas did against Tennessee and the way that Kentucky did against Ole Miss, or you figure out a way to win some sort of shootout and it's 38-35. This dual quarterback system for Florida has seemingly been able to work. They've been able to work and win football games with it. I question whether or not either of those approaches right now can work for Florida against Tennessee on the road. I like Tennessee right now to win the football game, but I'm looking at 15.5 points right now, just asking why is the spread there?
It is a lot. And Blaine, I think there's a couple paths here for Florida, and we got to dive into what's happened with Tennessee offensively. I know we talked about it a little bit in the past couple of days, but I don't know if maybe as a Florida fan it's watching it and hoping you lose, but maybe it's watching the game and you know what? If it's going great. Nobody's going to be upset about a win against Tennessee on the road. But if you lose it, maybe it doesn't sting as much because you know it's a means to an end. And this probably had to happen for Florida to get into a position where maybe they can get back to the position they feel like they deserve they need to be in with a new coach.
Well, I think even if Billy Napier wins this football game, he still won't be the head coach of Florida walking into it.
And that could be very true.
Yeah, I think 2 things can be true at once. You look at the later half of Florida's schedule, God, it's daunting. You're at Georgia at home, you go to Texas, LSU at home, and then you go to Ole Miss, and obviously you finish the season with Florida State. And the more I look about this game, I agree with David, 14.5, which I think it is at now. It's already getting bet down from 15.5, is too many points. And I don't think you have to do anything special to beat this Tennessee football team. I mean, what good program has Nico showed you that he can ball against? Nothing I've seen. He's had 2 against big teams. That's Arkansas, and the week before against Oklahoma. Hasn't thrown for 200 yards. And we sit here and talk about Nico's feet and his legs from a rushing standpoint. He hasn't done anything either to impress me. And I will go back to the Florida side and Billy Napier. I think you need to make a decision at quarterback. I don't like the 2-prong approach, especially in this game. Graham Mertz is the guy, right? Who's the guy is. I know he didn't look phenomenal last week, but if you're going to bring DJ Lagway in, that's for the dual threat. Graham Mertz and DJ had the same amount of rushing attempts and same amount of rushing yards. So I think this game, Billy Napier's fate is sealed. Billy Napier will not be the head coach next year. I think this game's bigger for Josh Heupel than it is for Billy Napier.
Well, and yeah, I mean, if we're talking about coaches that'll still be there, I agree with you. Here's where I'm at with Tennessee, and I'm going to get to the 2-quarterback system that you're talking about in a moment, because there's a couple things that are going on with that I think we have to put the context around to see why they're doing it. First off, with Tennessee, something that we talked about the last couple of days, it feels like to me it's one of 2 things. One is that Nico is stuck in the same spot that Jalen Milroe was early last year in saying that, you know what, I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm a pocket passer. I don't need to run around and do all this. I need to show everybody I'm an NFL quarterback that can sit from the pocket, throw the ball away when I need to throw it away, not really have to create, but stay on time and stay on rhythm. So it's either that, or he is legitimately worried, talking about Nico, of making a big mistake that's going to cost them the game. Because I went back and I watched, because we talked Sunday about Tennessee not pushing the ball down the field. You know, Tennessee's offense should be fun. One of the scariest parts about Tennessee's offense is their ability to rip chunk plays down the field and how they can actually work backwards from the vertical third back to the line of scrimmage. And, they got a good run game as well to go along with the quick screen game and the way they manipulate their splits at wide receiver. But it's like they've taken the fun out of it. They only operate within a 15-yard window, but I go back and I watch these route combinations, and there are guys that are working down the field. They're not always wide open, but Nico is looking them off almost every time. It's almost like he's stuck in a trance of, well, I guess we are a defensive team, and I am a young quarterback, so I might as well not turn the ball over and blow the game. You can't operate like that, and now Tennessee's offense is boring. Not only is it slower, because they're realizing, hey, we're not moving the ball at the rate we need to, and even though we have more depth on defense, we've got to make sure our defense doesn't take too many snaps. It's become boring. It's like there's either there's training wheels or a governor on Nico, or Nico's putting the training wheels on, or the governor himself. And the more I watch the film, I think it's Nico, because he's not creating with his legs, David. Yeah. He's not trying. He doesn't seem like he has the confidence to go out there and create the big play and realize, look, it's not going to work out beautifully from the pocket every time. I have all these gifts that God's given me. So to me, the verdict right now is that Nico's kind of afraid to push the ball down the field. And I think Josh Heupel might sense that. And I think Josh Heupel is a little bit rocky, not, pun intended, to say, you know what, Nico, here, we're just going to call plays where you have to work the ball down the field or whatever. There's a disconnect there, David, and it's taken the fun and really the motive and what makes Tennessee the most dangerous out of their offense, which, regardless of how good your defense is going to keep the other team in the game. And it cost them, because Arkansas was able to hang around, and then stab you at the end.
Man, it's crazy to think Tennessee beat NC State 51-10, and we're sitting here thinking, well, actually, we may be a defensive team, and we need to play different on offense.
To me, that's more worrisome.
What a couple weeks difference will make. I'll never blame a quarterback for the play calling, right? Like, he can't control that. That's on the coaches. So whether or not there's more quarterback design run, I'll say the same thing like we said for Jalen Milroe last year. That needs to be called from the sideline. Now, whether or not Josh Heupel doesn't have the confidence in his ability to push the ball down the field, and that's affecting play calling, that may be true, even though this style of offense is so much different. If you're going to go warp speed like this and keep things simpler, then the offense is by definition going to look different than what Alabama has run, even though there's 2 different coordinators and all that. But he clearly was better when Tennessee made a concerted effort in the second half of that Arkansas game to get the ball out of his hands quicker and to attack the boundary on some of those shorter throws. Now, why they're not running him more, I don't understand that. I think that they need to do that. One thing I wanted to ask you, Blaine, when you were talking about Florida's schedule for the rest of the year, if Florida were to win this game, and the end of that schedule isn't quite as daunting now that we know a little more about Florida State and their trajectory. Florida's at 3 wins. If they win this one, they beat Tennessee, who I still think is going to be pretty good this year, even with a loss to Florida. And they beat Florida State, that'd give you 5. Can you read off a couple more of those teams in the middle that could get them to
so
bowl
we'll just go through the
eligibility?
whole schedule. Obviously, you have Tennessee on the road this weekend. You have Kentucky at home. Next weekend, you have Georgia at home. You go to Texas. You have LSU at home. And you have Ole Miss at home. And you in the year at FSU.
So, Jake, if they were to steal another one of those, this is a lot of ifs. I understand that, and we still got to play this game out. But if they get to 6-6, it still doesn't seem like enough to me for Billy Napier's 3rd year to keep him there. But we've been talking about how tough this schedule was all year. If they go 6-6, find themselves in a bowl game that they could then win for a winning record, what happens then?
That's why I opened with what I opened with, because I see a path to 6-6. And Scott Strickland them saying, well, you know, you look at DJ Lagway, you look at some of the young guys on the roster, then you look at that schedule, and next year's just as brutal. It's just basically flipped. So you'd be bringing in a brand new guy. And again, the longer this goes on, the less the buyout would be for Billy Napier. I think 6-6, there's a decent chance he may stay. And you just beat UCF. So now that loss against Miami, while you do want to beat Miami and you want to hold home turf, you beat UCF and then you beat Florida State, who's doing worse than you, by the way, at the end of the season. I see a path where they keep them at 6-6. That's why I opened with what I opened, because and again, it hinges on this game, right? To me, I mean, I don't think you got Georgia at home. I don't think you're winning that one. LSU, maybe we'll see, but there's a survivable path there. So that's why I wanted to open with it, because I can see that a little bit. And I want to know what Florida fans think, because I think most of them with 6-6, like you mentioned, are probably going to want Billy out. But going back to this game, if you are Tennessee, right, and you realize, hey, the defense is still playing really well. Say what you want about the Arkansas game. They shut them out at halftime. And defense wasn't the reason they lost that game. But if you're Florida and you're looking at this and realizing, well, you know, Tennessee isn't generating a lot of big plays. Maybe they're going to try and generate those plays and give Nico some confidence down the field against us. I think that changes the way you kind of prepare a little bit for Tennessee, and you may have a little more of the puzzle figured out than what you would have if everything was going smoothly and swimmingly for Tennessee, because you're having to defend less elements with Nico right now than you really should overall. And if I was a Tennessee fan, I would rather me be critiquing Nico because you're making young person mistakes by trying to make the big play as opposed to not making the big play. But at what point, if you're Tennessee, Blaine, if let's say this game isn't going good early and Florida punches first, are you still inept on offense? At what point does it start to creep into your head, maybe we aren't who we thought we were on offense, and Florida's able to hang around in this game. Now, knowing the way the season's gone, Tennessee will win by 50, right? But I could see a scenario in which that confidence kind of starts to really leak out of this Tennessee offense.
Well, I mean, if it hasn't leaked out already, we can't sit here and act like Arkansas is a phenomenal defensive team. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. I don't care where you played them, on the road, at home, in Russia, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not Oklahoma a little bit better, but I saw an Auburn team who's extremely mediocre on offense move the ball against both these teams. I think right now the offense for Tennessee just feels fraudulent to me. You beat NC State. Every team who played NC State's almost dropped 50.
But why is it fraudulent?
Because I think we gassed Nico up way too much. Way too much, including myself. All right, what has he proven? What has he shown against a team that actually has some real players on defense that he can go win a game? His own coach, all right, would rather lay up in a football game and lose than they'd have Nico go get it. What I saw late in that Arkansas game is Josh Heupel make the decision, well, Arkansas's backup quarterback's in, we'll do this, we'll play conservative.
Which is probably the right decision.
Well, sooner or later, you keep making that decision 6 drives after again and again and again. These guys are athletes. There's a reason in Arkansas, they're going to make some plays. And that's what happened. You have Nico, the one who walked on water, scored 50 against Iowa, like no one business even saw, who's looked extremely mediocre this year. And when you asked him to go get it, right, to go win the football game, he choked and he panicked. Didn't even throw the ball in the end zone. So I think it's our fault.
Yeah,
it's our fault for gassing him up.
Do we think it's more because these games were on the road? Because you go, and I know NC State is not a good football team. We don't have to sit here and debate that point. But it was a neutral site game,
Yeah.
and the offense did click. Now, there were some problems. He turned it over a couple times in that game. But is this a road thing, Dave?
That's a really good question. That's why I picked Oklahoma to beat Tennessee preseason, because I said, hey, this will be young Nico's first true road experience. And they go on the road and figure out a way to win that one. I do think that's a valid question. To Blaine's point, when I had a lot of Tennessee haters early in the year responding to me on social media on Nico's clip saying, yeah, that's fine throwing 70-yard touchdowns, but against Kent State or against, he hasn't played anybody yet. And I defended him saying some of the things he's doing in the pocket are great even if you're doing them against air.
Yeah.
The competition will come. Well, now the competition has come and he hasn't looked quite so good. So, I think most of those people were just saying that because they are Tennessee haters, but they've kind of been proven right. And to your point, the most alarming thing that I saw beyond all the rest of the game and any other plays he had, not throwing the football into the end zone at the very end of the game.
It seems like he doesn't know what
chance.
he's looking at. Like, I remember watching that Arkansas game where he had time in the pocket, even with pressure coming, and he'd look up and not know
Well, you know what? And you may be right. Like, you may be right. But guess what? If you look up and don't see it, you know what you need to do? Take off.
Take off and run.
I watched you cook Iowa. Like, I've watched him run. It is almost, I don't know which one it is because I don't know him. Either he is not trusting himself to say, you know what, sometimes I do need to backyard it. Sometimes I do need to go out here and out-athlete some people. Or it's to the point where he's trying to make the point to everybody else, just like Jalen Monroe did at points last year early for Alabama, that, look, I know I can run, but I'm not a runner. How many times do we hear quarterbacks that can run say that? Oh, I know I can run, but I want to prove to people that I can throw it. Dude, make the best
But I just don't
there.
know if that was the same. No one really looked at Nico as just a runner. Like,
No, I'm not
Well, that
saying
bowl
you're
game,
just
didn't he
a
have like
runner.
4 running touchdowns against Iowa?
Yeah,
but he threw
cooked
for like
them.
300
Yeah,
plus.
he cooked them. But I'm telling you, it's like a human condition thing. Like, it's looked down upon. Like, you're not truly a quarterback. If you're running, opens up your pass game, or if you're not throwing the ball well, it can get you out of trouble. He's not even using it to get him out of trouble.
I hope that's not the case.
Like, I hope it's not the case either, but I don't know him.
Let me ask you one last question here. So if Tennessee responds against Florida the same way that Ole Miss responded against South Carolina, you phrased it a second ago as, they'll probably go out and win by 50 or something. If something like that happens, and this game is at Neyland, is that going to validate your theory that maybe he just has a road problem?
I mean, it would make it look a lot more viable. And if I'm a Tennessee fan, I would rather it be that. I'd rather have a road problem than a road and home
Well,
problem.
I mean, because after that, you're going to get Bama at home, Kentucky at home, Mississippi State at home. You have to go to Georgia in between the hedges, UTEP at home, and then at Vanderbilt. So only 2 more true road games after this.
Yeah, and that Vandy game looks a little bit scarier at the end of the year. But
Vandy will beat
I think it would. If he balls out at home, yes, you would feel good. You want to see him ball out. All right, I think maybe you're like, all right, now he can take it on the road, and we'll see if it works, whatever. Even though you do get those games at home, like you just mentioned in the row, including Alabama. But yeah, I think it would validate more. Maybe this is a road problem. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Do us a favor, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We'd really, really appreciate it. And thanks as always for being here.